Okay, so there is a huge debate blowing up online about the new Starfleet Academy show, and one critique in particular has really caught fire, arguing that the show isn't just, a little off, it's a complete betrayal of its own legacy. Today, we're going to break down the key arguments from that source material to really understand the case it's making.
So, what's really at the heart of this argument? Look, this isn't just some simple thumbs down review. The source lays out this really methodical case, arguing that the series is pretty much failing on every level you can think of, from its viewership numbers all the way down to its creative DNA. So, yeah, let's unpack that.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We've split the source's whole argument into 5 main parts. First, we'll look at the evidence they present for the show's supposed decline. Then, we'll dive headfirst into the criticism of the new characters and how it handles the franchise lore. After that, we'll get into the critics' much bigger philosophy on who entertainment should even be for. And then, finally, we'll get to their ultimate verdict on what went so wrong.
So, let's jump right in with the first major claim that Starfleet Academy is just not connecting with viewers. And according to the source, the numbers are there to prove it.
The critic kicks things off with a pretty stark piece of evidence. They claim a recent episode got only a single user review on Rotten Tomatoes. And, you guessed it, it was negative. Now, for the source, this isn't just a bad score. This is Exhibit A for what they call total audience indifference. And get this, the source even takes positive press and kind of flips it on its head. It points to headlines just like this one and argues that when they say fans have been yearning for an episode like this, it's basically an accidental admission that everything before that episode was failing to give fans what they actually wanted. And to wrap up this point, the critique throws in 2 more things. First, that the show supposedly can't even crack the top 10 viewership charts. And second, the suggestion that a big-name actor is already heading for the exit before season 2, a move the source speculates is tied directly to the show's perceived quality issues. Now, this leads us right into the source's second, and maybe its sharpest, line of attack, the new characters they're introducing into this universe. And at the core of this whole character critique is this massive contrast. On one side, you have the traditional Klingon we all know, right? A warrior culture defined by this fierce, this species comes first mentality. And then on the other side, the source points to a new character described as a shy, bird-watching Klingon who wears a skirt. For this critic, it's just a complete and total departure from the species' core identity. So then, the source looks at how the actor has apparently responded to this kind of criticism. It highlights this statement right here, where the actor seems to be saying ahead of time that any negative feedback is just rooted in bigotry, and that if you disagree, you should just unfollow. And the source's comeback to that is pretty direct. They argue that for a huge franchise like this, the focus shouldn't be on a small group of new fans. It should be on the majority audience, the established fan base that built the whole thing in the first place.
So you can see how this critique of just one character starts to snowball into a much bigger accusation, that the show isn't just trying out new ideas, but that it's actively betraying the fundamental history and principles, the lore, of the entire franchise.
And the critic lays out a few key examples of this supposed betrayal. They argue that creative choices, like putting male characters in skirts, completely misinterpret the original show's decisions, which, according to the source, were specifically designed for a male target demographic back in the 1960s. And a really crucial point for their whole argument is this unique take on the Section 31 storyline from Deep Space Nine. Now, a lot of people see that as a critique of the Federation's perfect utopian ideals, but this critic argues it's the exact opposite. They claim it was a story about pragmatic sacrifice, a necessary shadow operation to protect the very innocence the Federation stands for. So, all this talk about lore and what's right for the franchise, it really brings us to the ideological core of this entire critique. And it raises a question that goes way beyond just Star Trek. Who is entertainment actually for? This quote right here, it pretty much sums up the source's entire philosophy. The argument is really simple. Every single creative decision, from a character's personality to a costume, has to serve the primary target audience. And if it doesn't, the critic says, it just shouldn't be in there. And they actually try to put some numbers to this idea. They claim that modern entertainment is making this disastrous trade. It's pushing away the huge 98.5% majority of its potential audience just to cater to a tiny 1.5% niche. And to them, that's a model that's just creatively and commercially doomed to fail. So what's the fix, according to the source? Well, they argue for going back to an older way of doing things. Instead of trying to smush mainstream and niche tastes into one product, they say you should create separate content for separate audiences. That way, niche interests get served, but without, in the critic's view, watering down the major franchises. All right, so after all that, what does the source say is the real root cause of all these supposed failures? In the final section of the critique, they offer up their diagnosis. The source claims the problem isn't just one bad idea, it's a fundamental lack of interest from the creators themselves. The argument is that the writers don't actually care about the universe's lore. They're just using a beloved franchise as a big, empty stage for their own personal, emotional stories. And the final verdict? It all comes down to cynical self-interest. The source alleges that creators and actors are embracing these changes not for some artistic reason, but as a way to climb the ladder and advance their own careers, landing positions they might not get based on merit alone. At the end of the day, this entire deep dive into one specific critique leaves us with a much bigger, much trickier question, one that's really at the center of modern pop culture. When it comes to these massive legacy franchises, who gets the final say on its future? The creators who are tasked with telling new stories, or the generations of fans who keep it alive? That's a conflict with no easy answer.